What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Down South Packers podcast with me, your host, Anthony Boyd. Today, I'm going to be talking about Brian Gutekunst's press conference, postseason press conference today that he had with the media. Go over some of the key talking points and things that I picked up on while I was listening to it earlier. Want to thank you all for listening. Go ahead and drop a subscribe. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, stay tuned in to all the things that we're going to be doing here on the channel. Going to be talking a lot about Packers through the offseason, trying to think about draft prospects, free agent prospects, where the Packers need to improve. I think it's very clear this team needs to improve, but I'll be going a little deeper in depth with who I think the Packers can go after once the new league year starts here in a few weeks, starting with free agency. So stay subscribed to the channel. Stay listening to us on whatever you get your podcasts on. And we're going to talk a little bit about this press conference today. So Gutekunst had a press conference at 12:30 Green Bay time. I listened to it as soon as it came on, and he started off by saying, it's kind of upsetting that this team wasn't able to finish games this year, especially in the last 5 games of the season where the Packers would have a lead and then would blow it, near the end of the game. I think with that Denver game, you saw a trend that happened with these blown leads, and that's something that I noticed when the Packers were blowing leads and losing these close games. It was always coming down to the offensive line. The offensive line in the second half would collapse and would not play well. I don't know what it was about the second half of games where the Packers could not finish off teams when they had them dead in the rights. It was kind of baffling. I don't know if teams picked up on something the Packers offensive line was doing, but I don't think they were getting stunted that much, and it changed. I think the Packers were just getting outmanned. The Bears also did the same thing in the second half, where they came out and just destroyed the Packers offensive line. The Packers couldn't do anything. Tried to run the ball, can't run the ball. They're not getting a push, can't pass the ball because the Bears are getting too much pressure. So throughout a lot of those losses, it seemed like the offensive line was the issue. Obviously, there's some holes. You lose your starting center. You have Sean Ryan playing at center, who I don't think played that bad for moving be the center midpoint, not middle of the season, but part of the way through the season. I thought he stepped in and did a good job. I thought Anthony Belton came in and had a pretty good year for a rookie. Jordan Morgan, I don't like moving him around that much, and that's something that Goody spoke about more today, was cross-training him still and allowing him to play different spots on the offensive line. And I know that's something that's big with this Packers coaching staff and this front office, is having versatile linemen. However, I will say that Jordan Morgan's heading into his third year. You kind of want to see what he can do, and he looks a lot more comfortable when he's out there at tackle versus being on the interior of the offensive line. I don't know if he fits well there. Let him play left tackle. Let him specialize in it. Let him grow into that position, and hopefully you have an anchor point at the left side of that offensive line to protect your franchise quarterback's blind side. Is personally how I feel about it. Also, news coming out of Philadelphia that Jeff Stoutland is stepping away from being their offensive line coach. Now, I do think the report is also saying that he's still hanging around Philly. If I'm the Packers, I am reaching out to that man and trying to get him in Green Bay. There's not a lot, but there's some young talent in Green Bay that he can come up here, help mold, and kind of solidify this offensive line moving forward in the future. Obviously, the Packers are likely going to be aggressive in the draft, trying to get offensive linemen, maybe looking at free agency. I don't know how many solid options there are in that. I know Andy Herman just did a podcast that came out, I think, earlier today about offensive line. I'm not 100% sure about how I feel about a lot of those options. They're their bodies at offensive line, and it'd be nice to try to get somebody in here to compete and solidify this offensive line, because like I said, a lot of these losses in the second halves of games came down to the offensive line just not being able to perform when you need it to the most. So if you can, Packers, go after Jeff Stoutland, try to bring him in, let him know there's a huge reason for you to be here. You could be used, and your services could be really appreciated up here in Green Bay. Come help this offensive line out. Another thing that Goody spoke about was some of the players that he felt like played good. He talked about the defense and the defense playing well. He talked about the cornerback room. Obviously, that's a question mark, and a lot of fans, and myself included, want to see that improved at some point during this offseason. I don't know if you go at it in free agency or if you're going at it through a trade on a player with an expiring contract. There are some options that I'm thinking about. I'll do a video on those, but there's a couple of options that I think about. But the draft, there's some options there too. Some players that can come in and contribute to this Packers team. Maybe be there at that pick 52, depending on how they want to play that. They can go defensive line there, which I think they'll do. They'll go interior D line, but I'd like to see them get some cornerbacks, maybe a couple in the draft. Bring some guys in to compete with this current group of cornerbacks. He spoke on Nate Hobbs' injury and how he had some dings before he got to the Packers, but once he got here, he was really banged up and couldn't seem to fight through them and play a lot this season. Also, just with Hobbs' play on the field, I don't know if you want him at an outside corner. He kind of paid the slot guy to come play outside, and he just did not look comfortable on the outside. Keyshawn Nixon is obviously going to be the most confident person that you'll come across, and I don't think that's a negative thing. That's something that corners need to have. However, I will say that you need to also understand that if there's room to grow, you could say there's room to grow. And Keyshawn Nixon as an outside corner has a good ways to go in terms of that. It's mostly effort stuff. I don't think technique's terrible, but I think he just gets out leveraged at times. But Keyshawn Nixon looks like a corner going into this season. I would like to see him return a little bit more. We'll get on that later. Carrington Valentine, pretty good in coverage, can read a play but can't make tackles. And I don't know how long you last in the NFL at corner not being able to tackle out in the open field. That's what you have to do as a corner. So we'll see some improvements there, hopefully. A lot of people are talking about how Goody seemed content with the cornerback room. I think that's just kind of him not showing his hand and what he's planning on doing in the offseason. Don't want to give any other GMs or teams ideas as to what the Packers are already thinking before the season's, technically even over. The new league year hadn't started. So something he spoke about. Another thing, special teams, he said, at least what you can gather from the information that he spoke about with special teams, is Rich Bisaccia will be back, will be coaching the special teams for the Packers next year. Goody defended Brandon McManus and said that he battled through an injury and he was dealing with a lot, but and I understand you tied up money in Brandon McManus, and so you want to use him whenever he's available. Lucas Havershek, I know he did miss a kick when he did come back and play, but I would have loved to have just rode out that guy throughout the season if possible. And if McManus was dealing with an injury and that's leading to poor performance, then I don't know if he should have been on the field. You saw that Tyler Bass up in Buffalo was injured, and he ended up having to take some time off to get surgery and fully recover so that he could be back. If McManus really had an injury that was nagging and limited him in terms of his play, then he should have been off of the field. Another thing is Goody talked about how the return teams were pretty good. The coverage teams were good. I think the coverage teams were solid. I will agree with that. I don't think the return teams were great, and I think that's a lot of the issue that I have with the special teams, whether it's punt return or kick return. Kick return was hard to watch this season. I didn't really have an idea as to what the Packers were doing in terms of kickoff returns. You had Bo Melton back there for the majority of the season. You had Savion Williams back there for chunks of the season when he was healthy. And then in the last game of the season, in the playoff game, we saw Josh Jacobs and Keyshawn Nixon back there. Now, I don't want Josh Jacobs back there all the time. Maybe if you were throwing that in there to try to throw a wrinkle in the playoffs, okay. Keyshawn Nixon, though, is an all-pro returner, and I would like to see him return kicks. He is good at returning kicks. Let's leave him back there. Or draft a receiver that's able to, or pick up a receiver that's able to do returns. But that's kind of an issue because Goody spoke about it in the press conference too, where you want special teamers who can also contribute in either offensively or defensively. And a lot of returners aren't going to be able to be great receivers as well. That's at least not in the style of offense that the Packers like to play. That's just something that you'll have to live with, but I would love to see them try to do something more creative at return, especially with this new kickoff. And then speaking back to the coverage teams, if the coverage teams are good, I have a hard time understanding why the Packers kick so many touchbacks. and gave up field position. If your coverage teams are good, I would expect you to just kick the ball deep and tell a team, hey, you got to beat me. You got to return this. But the Packers didn't do that, and they would kick some they kicked some touchbacks pretty comfortably. Little conflicting thing there from Goody. Doesn't really make much sense to me. Last thing I wanted to touch on that he talked about was the 2022 class. That was, I think, one of Goody's best classes, if not his best class. I spoke on it on the last pod. But we know there's going to have to be people who don't get re-signed. We know that Christian Watson will be re-signed. He's too big of a player for this team with his speed and his ability to get open, his rapport with Jordan. We know that he's going to stay. I would love Romeo Doubs to stay, but Romeo Doubs is going to make more money on the open market than he can make right now with the Packers. And like everyone knows, Matthew Golden was drafted to kind of move into that position of Romeo Doubs. Romeo Doubs is a great receiver. I think has some of the most reliable hands on the team. But you're going to move on with Watson. I think Quay Walker's gone, obviously. He has great production. I think this draft class is a little deep at linebacker, and you can go out and try to draft a young linebacker. Goody's done a pretty good job at drafting linebackers. Quay's going to be a solid starter at some other team and make good money, but he won't be on the Packers next year more than likely. Go ahead and take a chance on a young guy. Go ahead and dive into those receivers that you drafted and move on from the 2022 class. It's not official yet, but those two guys who likely won't be here, I'll wish them the best because they're fun to watch. Quay Walker struggled in pass coverage. So hopefully the Packers can find a linebacker that can cover a little bit better than Quay, but Quay is a beast in defending the run, and I'm happy to see that he was a Packer. And I said it during the season too, just a lot of growth from him as a man. You can tell. I'm not in the locker room, but just looking from the outside in, you can tell that he seems like he's grown a lot as a person from his rookie season where he pushed the line staffer, got ejected. And then I think there was a situation this year that I saw where he could have reacted like old Quay would have and pushed somebody, but he chose not to and kind of restrained himself. I'm proud of Quay Walker right there. This press conference had a lot in it, a lot of information from Goody. A lot of coach speak, of course. He's not going to give away what he's planning on do, but I think there were some subtle things that you could pick up on with some of the questions that were asked to him. Kudos to the guys asking him questions today at the press conference, trying to get some information out of him. We'll see what the Packers do over the next few weeks, over the next few months leading to the draft, kind of see if we can get a lean on what they're thinking about in terms of players to draft. So we'll keep an eye on it. I will be coming up with players that I'm interested in and who I think the Packers can target. And on Monday, we will have a joint pod coming out with Devin Long from Down South Bills. Going to be talking about each one of our teams, asking each other some questions about our teams, and probably giving a quick little Super Bowl post-game reaction. So I'll get to that on Monday. I'll see you guys then. Until then, thank you for watching. I appreciate you listening to the content. It's much appreciated. It doesn't go unnoticed. Every view, every like, every comment, I really appreciate it. Thank you all. Love you. And always go Pack Go.